Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this video, we're going to do a new top 10 of the SH Figuarts Dragon Ball figures per many viewers' requests. Now, I don't have Gogeta yet because my order was canceled, so he'd likely be on the list, but I don't have him, so we're just going to ignore that and move right into the honorable mention. The honorable mention for this list is Bulma. Now here's the thing, this figure is really good in a lot of ways. It's really well detailed, it poses particularly well, it has a nice batch of accessories. Problem is, it's Bulma, and it's not even Bulma from Dragon Ball Z, or even really Dragon Ball. It's the one from the cover art, which was never really in the show, so there's really no need to buy this figure, unless you're just buying them for the Dragon Balls. But she does have one, so if you are, then you win. But it's just kind of like an erroneous release. It doesn't really serve a purpose. So it's a really solid figure, despite the joints looking kind of funny. It just isn't one that people really need. So I'm just gonna leave it here in the honorable mentions. That way you guys are aware of it, but you probably don't need to buy it. Coming in at number 10, we have Great Saiyaman. This is a more recent release, so it's kind of fresh in my memory, but I do think this is a really strong release. It's got a lot of stuff to like about it, other than some people not liking the character itself, which is definitely a problem if you're looking for figures to buy. You have to like the character. I personally don't mind either way, so as far as I'm concerned, it's fine. They did a great job with the helmet, they did a great job with the sculpt, it's highly posable, there's a whole lot to like about this. It has really nice Gohan heads as alternate accessories, so that's really nice. The only real downside to this thing is that the cape falls off very easily. And when you try to pose him, the front part of the cape tends to not stay in place, so it can pose some posing problems, no pun intended. It's a really strong release, just it's another character that many people aren't going to care about even if they are fans of Dragon Ball and, well, Dragon Ball Z. It's just not one that's absolutely necessary, so it's kind of farther back on the list, even though it is, for the most part, a really strong release. Coming in at number 9, we have the OG Trunks, which is probably one of the most popular figures they've released in the line, not counting Broly, probably, I'm thinking maybe, because it's Trunks, and everybody likes Trunks, but this was also one of their first very good figures. Like, they had a lot of good figures, but this one came with a buttload of stuff. It had a really nice sculpt, lots of shading, lots of paint throughout, very posable. It was easily their best figure at the time, by far. The number of accessories alone boosts the point scale, whatever that means, a whole bunch. Here's the downside though, if you get the original release, the sword scabbard can either break or not connect very well, and if you get the reissue with the premium paint, the paint's not necessarily the best looking combination, even though the sword thing is a little bit fixed. So it's a great release, absolutely a must-have if you're a Trunks fan. However, there are some drawbacks, so that's why it's not higher up on the list. Coming in at number 8, we have the newest base Goku figure. Now I know what you're thinking, we've got a million Gokus, and we've had about a million before this one, so we don't need to buy this one. Except, this is probably the best base form Goku we've gotten. It's probably the best overall Goku we've gotten, only because, not only, but mostly because it's really cheap. It's like 30 bucks. And of course I'm basing this on MSRP, I can't talk about secondhand prices, that's irrelevant. 30 bucks for this figure, it's got enough accessories, especially if you get the power pole for it also. It's like the perfect base form Goku. You really don't need anything else, and if you have a Dragon Ball collection, whether it's Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball whatever, you need a base form Goku, and this figure is incredibly strong. It has great posability, a perfect aesthetic, almost perfect anyway. It's just basically exactly what you would want for a base form Goku, so it needs to make the list. It's minimal, but it's cheap, so that's why it's on here, just not farther up. Coming in at number 7, we have the Awakening Goku, which was at the time just the bee's knees of Goku figures. It's probably still the best looking Super Saiyan Goku. I don't think they've topped it yet, not counting Gods or 3s or whatever else versions of Super Saiyan, but base form Super Saiyan Goku, you know what I mean. They haven't really topped this. Is it perfect? No. The colors are a little washed out for the uniform. The hair's a little candy corny and it's not perfect, but it is highly posable. It features all of the newer articulation. It's dynamic. The only downside as far as it being battle damaged is it doesn't have cuts and things on it, which I know a lot of people really wanted, but they don't typically sell figures like that of their properties. So I think it's a perfectly reasonable option to pick up. It's an iconic scene from the show. It's a great representation of it. And it just looks really good on a shelf. So really fantastic figure, could use some more accessories and probably richer colors, but otherwise I think it's one of their better releases still to this day, and it's still pretty inexpensive to get. So I think you might want to track it down. Coming in at number 6, we have any one of the 3 regular OG Brolys. There's obviously 3 different color schemes you can get for this guy. They're all the same figure aside from paint, and whether you like the paint or not is a matter of preference. So any one you pick is fine. This is the one I happen to have on display at the time, so that's why it's here. But this guy is easily one of my personal favorite figures of this line. It is one of the most striking figures to put on a shelf that they've released. It's absolutely gorgeous to look at. And it's huge, and it's Broly, so those are all fantastic things to like. It does have minimal accessories, but enough, which make it perfectly fine. Here's the only real downside for this guy. It's relatively difficult to pose him, especially freestanding. If you get a stand in there, sure, but obviously it's better to not have to use a stand. This guy's very, very difficult to pose, just because by nature, he's huge. He's dummy thick on top and has relatively normal sized feet, which is reasonable because as your muscles get bigger, your feet will stay the same. So it makes sense, but it's still just relatively difficult to pose him very dynamically, and his skirt kind of hinders it a little bit based on how it's sculpted. So a couple drawbacks, but all in all, a fantastic figure, one of the most enjoyable figures to have on your shelf. So it's easily on this list. I just think some of the other ones are probably a little bit better, and that's why he's not farther up. Coming in at number 5, we have Adult Krillin. This is maybe the most fun figure I have. Nah, that's not true. There's better, newer ones since this one came out. Anyway, this figure poses incredibly well. It's an almost perfect representation of Krillin, and he comes with an energy effect. We rarely get that on these figures, so that's a huge bonus anytime we do. But aside from maybe wanting the eyes to not be white, because that's how he's in the anime, I think this is just about perfect. I mean, obviously there's things that you could improve, but for what it is, it's perfect, if that makes any sense. I don't think it's a coincidence that we haven't had a new version of Krillin yet. He features a lot of the newer types of articulation, and there's really nothing to improve upon on him other than minor tweaks, maybe a color change. I don't know what else they would do. It's a really strong release. He might have even been number 1 when he released, when I made that top 10 list for the year. Maybe that was Frieza, I don't know. Either way, incredibly strong figure, has held up incredibly well over the years despite newer releases having newer features and things. This guy is just fantastic and a must-have for any Dragon Ball collector. Coming in at number 4, we have the OG Final Form Frieza, and just like Krillin, there's a reason they haven't replaced this figure. It is almost perfect. It does feature some of the older joints in the hips in particular, so it can have some issues with looseness and things like that, but the sculpt is fantastic, the paint's really good. Unlike Broly, I'm gonna say the original one is a much stronger release than the newer version of the same figure, and that one did have a few new pieces, unlike on Broly, but this one is the one to get. Sure, the accessories aren't as vibrant as they could be, like the Death Ball or whatever it's called, I can't remember right now off the top of my head, but it is still easily, by far, without a doubt, the best version of Frieza we've gotten from them. Now, that's not saying a whole lot because we don't have a ton, but there's not a whole lot they could do to improve upon this mold. It's highly posable, it has shading, it has a bunch of accessories. It's just exactly what you need out of a Frieza figure, so you gotta get it. I think it was the top 10 figure for that year. The top 1 of the 10 figures for that year. I'm not sure, but it was really, really, really good, and it still really, really, really is. Coming in at number 3, we have Goku Black. And I know a lot of people had a lot of issues with this figure. I personally didn't. I didn't think it had too many problems at all. Some people will say the neck is too short. That's just from the clothes. It's not actually too short. It just looks like it because he's got clothes that make his neck look short, but it's not, it's the clothes. But here's the thing, the hair is gorgeous. It might be the best hair they've done ever. The shading on it, the coloring on it, perfect. He comes with energy effects, 2 different ones. I personally prefer the really dark purple blast effect, or charge effect, I guess is a better way of saying it. It's just one of those figures that looks outstanding on the shelf. And I mean that literally, it stands out from the rest of the figures on the shelf. The contrast of the darks to the lights, and then the energy effects that it comes with, the high level of shading in the hair, that's fantastic. It's easy to pose this guy. Yeah, I mean, I guess technically they could update a few things like the ankles, perhaps. That's about it. So literally 2 things, one ankle and then the other. It's an exceptionally good release, highly fun to pose, and it looks great on the shelf. There's almost nothing bad to say about it in the context of this video, so it's easily the number 3 spot. And a lot of these could be argued to be higher or lower. A lot of these figures are kind of interchangeable. It comes down to fun factor and personal preference, but I think this guy belongs in the top 3, but not any higher. Coming in at number 2, we have the new version of Full Powered Broly. Now, I want to point out that the not Full Powered Broly is coming out relatively soon does look also fantastic, but it is not out yet. So we're going to just go with Full Power here, and it's a fantastic figure. It has a couple drawbacks, one being that the torso is relatively limited in posability, and 2 being that the feet are oversized. And don't say they're oversized in the show, they were not, and they are not in the concept art. They are just not tiny feet in the concept art or in the show. However, his feet are way too big here, so that is a drawback. I don't personally mind it that much because how often are you going to look at the feet? And otherwise, it's like perfect almost. Like the sculpt is amazing. Relative to the other Dragon Ball figures, this guy has by far the best musculature, best sculpt, and it's all shaded. What? That's a perfect combination. And then the hair, really nicely done. The face, gorgeous. It's just such a stunning figure to look at. It poses well enough, and it's huge, so it stands out on a shelf. All the benefits of the old Broly, just with big feet kind of, and he's much easier to pose because he's a lot trimmer of a figure. It's not because he has giant feet, for the record. That's not an argument. He's easier to pose because he's a lot more balanced of a character design. So that's a nice bonus too. So this guy easily makes the number 2 spot. There's only one figure I have which is more fun to play with, and that is our number 1 slot. Coming in at number 1 of the top 10 SH Figuarts Dragon Ball figures, we have Goten, Super Buu. When it's time for me to take a bath and I need to pick a figure to take with me, this is the one I always grab first. This guy is just basically perfectly recreated from 2D to 3D. He's highly posable, very easy to pose this guy, no problems at all. He's very well balanced, and the sculpt is fantastic. You could make the argument, as some people have, that some of the joints are too obvious. Well, you need to have joints on an action figure if you want it to work, and the ones that work particularly well tend to show. I think this figure has a great balance of the aesthetic and the posability, and it's just, it's a big one, kind of like Broly. He's almost the same height as Broly, he's a lot trimmer. So he stands out on a shelf. He's obviously a bright pink color, so that's going to help him stand out. He looks great, he looks exactly like he should from the show, and like I said, he's highly posable. So when it comes to the Dragon Ball figures, I don't think one is as good overall in a balanced way than this one. There's not much you could change about this guy to make him better. Hiding the joints anymore would probably make him less posable. And that's really it. I guess maybe energy effects, accessories, you could add some, but that's about it. It's a really, really strong release and easily, as far as I'm concerned, the number 1 Dragon Ball figure. So thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. I do have top 10 videos out once a month, usually the first of the month, so we have all kinds of things like this. And I do have new videos out just about every single day for regular figure reviews and other stuff like that. And then there's already a few thousand videos on my channel if you want to check out more. So make sure you come back for all of that. And in the meantime, keep collecting.